Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I will be talking about Islam and slavery. Islam teaches that we are all slaves of Allah. The Bible says, if we do the will of our Father, we will become the children of God. They contradict each other. Now, in Islam, the name of Abdullah means slaves of Allah. The name of the father of Prophet Muhammad is Abdullah. Of course, there's a problem with that name. He died before Muhammad was even born. Muhammad received the revelation the first time when he was 40 years old. Do you see the problem with that? How could his father had a name that means slave of Allah? What Allah? Which Allah? Quran mentions that we were created to worship Allah only. In Surah 51, verse 56, it says, I created jinn and mankind only to worship me. There you go. That made us slaves of Allah. If Allah is the creator, why would he need slaves? For example, if he wanted burrito, he just need to say it, it would appear out of nothing. He could make dirty dish clean magically or disappeared. He doesn't need slaves. Islam teaches that angels do not have free will. Allah created angels, humans, and jinns. Angels do not have free will, and that make them slaves to Allah. How many slaves does Allah need? King Solomon was mentioned in Quran, and Allah sent him jinn slaves to help him building many things. Let us read from Surah 838, verse 36 to 38. So we gave him power over the wind, which at his request ran gently wherever he willed, and the jinn, every kind of builder and diver, and others chained in fetters. So Allah sent slaves to help King Solomon or Suleiman. So Allah has so many slaves, like the angels slaves, jinns slaves, and us slaves. So everyone slaves. So Allah is just creating slaves. That is funny, right? How the creator that create needs so many slaves. And those are physical slaves. We are slaves to worship him. Jinn are enslaved to build things. And angels are also slaves to do other things for Allah, such as picking up your soul when you're dead, asking questions where you're in the grave, recording your good deeds and bad deeds. Human can build camera or CCTV to record movements, any movements. Can God have something better without having angels to record things? In Quran, men can have sex with their female captives or slaves. Although the language is a little bit softer, it is not slaves. Instead, they use what your right hands possess. Let us read the verse. Surah 4, verse 24. I will read the whole thing, including words in brackets. And also prohibited to you are all married women, except those your right hands possess. This is the decree of Allah upon you, and lawful to you are all others beyond this, provided that you seek them in marriage with gift from your property, desiring chastity, not unlawful sexual intercourse. So, for whatever you enjoy of marriage from them, give them their due compensation as an obligation. And there is no blame upon you for what you mutually agree to beyond the obligation. Indeed, Allah is ever knowing and wise. Remember, I said I will read everything. So, actually, words in brackets I read are in marriage, of marriage, gifts from, yeah. So, it mean those words are not in Arabic Quran. So, if you have female slaves or servants, doesn't matter if they're married or not, you have right to have sex with them, as long you give them compensation as obligation. As long you both agree on the compensation, there is no blame. This is what we call contract marriage in modern time. Sunni Muslims will deny this, but not the Shia. The verse is actually supported by another verse. It's actually there's another verse only for Muhammad. Couple other verses I will read only for Muhammad. Surah 66 verse 1. O Prophet, why do you prohibit yourself from what Allah has made lawful for you, seeking the approval of your wives? And Allah is forgiving and merciful. And another verse from Surah 33 verse 50. O Prophet, we have made lawful unto thee thy wives unto whom thou hast paid their dowries, and those whom thy right hand possessed, of those whom Allah has given thee as spoils of war, and the daughters of thine uncle on the father's side, and the daughters of thine aunt on the father's side, and the daughters of thine uncle on the mother's side, and the daughters of thine aunt on the mother's side, who emigrated with thee, and a believing woman, if she give herself unto the prophet, and the prophet desire to ask her in marriage, a privilege for thee only, not for the rest of the believers. We are aware of that which we enjoined upon them concerning their wives, and those whom their right hands possess, that thou may be free from blame. For Allah is ever forgiving, merciful. Surah Tahrim, the first one I read actually, it's about when Muhammad having sex with his female slave, Maria the Coptic, and then Hafsa and Aisha complained about it. Right? The the second verse for Muhammad was another green light from Allah that Muhammad can marry whoever he wants. It's pretty much it. There's no stopping him. But remember this: if you're a woman or if you're a female, you're out of luck. If you think you could have sex with your male captives. For all the women out there, sorry, it doesn't work the other way around. Islam will say they freed slaves, which is not true. As long we read the hadith carefully, you will see it is not true. I will read you two similar hadith from Shahih al Bukhari, volume 3, book 46, hadith number 695, narrated by Asma bin Abu Bakr. The Prophet ordered us to free slaves at the time of solar eclipse. The second one, volume 3, book 46, number 696, narrated by Asma bin Abu Bakr. We were ordered to free slaves at the time of lunar eclipse. Do you notice something here? So at the time of eclipse, whether it's lunar or solar, they have to free slaves to get reward. It's not because it is the right thing to do, because to get reward for Muslims, they use the slave as a reward point for themselves. So they didn't free all the slaves at once, because the way of the reward system is designed. So every lunar eclipse, every solar eclipse, there is one or two or five, depends how many they have and how many they want. And next lunar eclipse, I can, or well, they can, um, they still have slaves to be freed. And next solar eclipse, next lunar eclipse, because Muslims had so many slaves. Even what Muslims always show example, a freed black slave, Bilal, the most famous slave in Islamic history, Bilal, who then had a new duty. His duty is to do the azan, call for prayer. He was a slave bought by Abu Bakr and he was freed, quote unquote, freed. But the truth is, he was never freed. They still treated him as a slave. He was freed by the title only. This hadith is the proof. Shahih al Bukhari, hadith number 3755. Narrated Qais. Bilal said to Abu Bakr, "If you have bought me for yourself, then keep me. But if you bought me for Allah's sake, then leave me for Allah's work." So he was bought by Abu Bakr too, and then he was to be slave, and then he was supposedly to be freed because he became a Muslim. Every morning he got up early to wake them up for prayer. But he was still treated as a slave. That's why he complained. Let me read the hadith about Muhammad owning slaves. Shahih al Bukhari 6161 narrated Anas bin Malik. Allah's messenger was on the journey and he had a black slave called Anjasya. And he was driving the camel very fast, and there were women riding on those camels. Allah's messenger said, "Why Haga?" Means, may Allah be merciful to you. O Anjasa, drive slowly with the glass vessels, i.e., women. So, this hadith showing two things. The Prophet think women as glass vessel, and showing one proof. He had a slave. I And also there's a similar hadith in Shahih Muslim. Shahih Muslim 23:23a. Anas reported that Allah's messenger had in one of the journeys his black slave who was called Anjasya along with him. He was just riding and singing song of camel driver. Thereupon Allah's messenger said, "Anjasya, drive slowly as you are driving the mounts who are carrying carrying glass vessels." So there you go. He still had Anjasya, and so if we read that hadith, we can see clearly that slavery was not abolished. Slavery may be modified at best. Let me show you one hadith from Sahih al Bukhari, volume 3, book 36, hadith number 483. Narrated Abu Hurairah. The Prophet prohibited the earnings of slave girls through prostitution. And then Shahih al Bukhari, volume 3, book 46, hadith number 723. I will read. Narrated Abu Musa al Ashari. The Prophet said, He who has a slave girl and teaches her good manners and improves her education, and then money meets her and marries her, he will get double reward. And any slave who observes Allah's right and his master's right will get double reward. So if you have a slave girl and then you put her in school and release her from slavery and then marry her, you will get double reward. And the slave must observe Allah's right and his or her master's right to get double reward as well. A man from the Ansar called Basra said, I married a virgin woman in her veil. When I entered upon her, I found her pregnant. I mentioned this to the Prophet. The Prophet said, she will get the dower, for you made her vagina lawful for you. The child will be your slave. When she has begotten a child, flog her according to the. So this the thing. This Sunan Abu Dawud. Sorry, Sunan Abu Dawud, book 11, hadith number 2126. So this person married a slave girl, well, released her and then married her, and turns out she's already pregnant. So Muhammad told him, there's nothing you can do but the woman, but except after that you can flog her, beat her up. And when after she delivered the child, the baby will be his slave. There are so many hadith talking about slavery that was still going on during the time of Prophet Muhammad. He did not abolish it. Let us read more hadith. Narrated Abu Hurairah, Allah's apostle said, there is no zakat either on a horse or a slave belonging to a Muslim. Shahih al Bukhari, volume 2, book 24, hadith number 542. Zakat in Islam is the charity based on everything they own. Now, let's say you're a Muslim and then you have like 1 kilogram of gold. Then from that gold, you have to give 2.5% of the value of the gold as a zakat. If you own a house and a car that valued at, I don't know, let's say just 1 million, you have to give 2.5% out of 1 million plus 2.5% from the value of the gold, 1 kilo of gold you own. But Prophet Muhammad said there is no zakat either on a horse or a slave belonging to a Muslim. So horses and slaves are duty free. That's basically it. During the war, Muhammad enslaved women and children. Let us read the hadith. Narrated Anas, the Prophet offered the Fajr prayer near Khaybar when it was still dark and then said, Allahu Akbar. Khaybar is destroyed. For whenever we approach a hostile nation, then evil will be the morning for those who have been warned. Then the inhabitants of Khaybar came out running on the roads. The prophet had their warriors killed, their offspring and women taken as captives. Safia was amongst the captive. She first came in the share of Daya, a Kali, but later on she belonged to the prophet. The prophet made her manumission as her mahar. Shahih al Bukhari, Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 51. So Muhammad took the men, the children and the women as slaves. He married Safia, and the dowry is her freedom. If you marry me, I'll give you freedom. That's it. Muhammad also traded slaves and sold slaves. Sahih Muslim, Book 10, Hadith number 3901. Jabir reported, there came a slave and pledged allegiance to Allah's apostle on migration. He, the prophet, did not know he was a slave. Then there came his master and demanded him back. Whereupon Allah's apostle said, sell him to me. And he bought him for 2 black slaves. He did not afterward take allegiance from anyone until he had asked them whether he was a slave or a free man. So Muhammad took a slave without knowing. After the slave pledged allegiance to him. So, and didn't know, and then the owner of the slave came and then got mad. What did you do? What did you do to my slave? So Muhammad had no choice. Okay, sell him to me. What is the price? The price is 2 black slaves from Muhammad. So Muhammad had slaves. It's not like he did not have slaves. He always had slaves. Now, Shahih al Bukhari, Volume 3, Book 41, Hadith number 598. Narrated Jabir, a man manumitted a slave, and he had no other property than that. So the Prophet cancelled the manumission and sold the slave for him. Al-Naham bought the slave from him. So this is the story about one of the Sahaba, one of the companions, free a slave because he was old, but he has nothing else. He had no property except the slave. So Muhammad cancelled the manumission and sold the slave to someone called Al-Naham, who bought him for 800 dirham and give the money for the Sahaba, the companion, who's old. So that guy was almost free. That slave was almost free. Now, we can read from Sahih al Bukhari, Hadith number 6904. 2 women from the tribe of Hudail fought with each other, and one of them threw a stone at the other, causing her to have a miscarriage, and Allah's messenger gave his verdict that the killer of the fetus should give a male or female slave as a diya. So there you go. Prophet Muhammad did not care about whether slavery or not. There are so many hadith about slavery in Islam. Did Muhammad free the slaves? Only to get reward during eclipse. Not because he cared for them, or because it's their right. No. Many people were misled. We won't know unless we read their own books. Muslims are tend to mislead others by saying the opposite. But now everything is made easy. We do not need to walk to library to read, looking for the books, buying books online. No, we can go to their own sources and website to read about Muhammad. Sunnah.com, Quran.com, at-tafsir.org, and so on, right? If we do that, no one can mislead us. That's all from me. And for those who tell the truth, God bless you and your family. And for those who tell lies, God bless you and your family. Have a nice life.